On our topic today, we are talking about how do intimacy affect relationships. Na nataka kuanza na kusema, once you get into a relationship and you realize that there is no intimacy, or probably you won't have intimacy in that relationship, it might affect you differently, because kama ulikuwa unapata intimacy in your previous relationship, this relationship might not make sense for you, especially kama we mwenye hoja make your decision. Yeah, you probably want to wait until marriage. Maybe it's your partner with who's coming up with that decision. Okay, and it can be a guy, it can be a lady. Unaweza pata hata mwanaume mwenye anasema me don't want to engage in intimacy, I want to wait until marriage, and it's very much okay. Okay, so here, once it get to that point, sometimes it can affect the relationship, because there are people who are like, if I cannot get intimacy, I cannot be in a relationship with you. So relationship inaweza come to an end just because there is no intimacy. All right, or relationship can come to a point where even the person is cheating, because now they know I cannot get intimacy from this person, so I want to be intimate with another person, but yet they are still in this relationship. So hapo ndo cheating pia inaweza kujia. All right, the other thing also that, the other way that also intimacy affect relationships is the fact that sometimes in a leading you watu kufika point wako like niaje, by this we move in together, because either the intimacy is too good hadi una feel manze I want this thing every single day. So you find most people push to the point where they start living together. So ni wase maybe hata wakiingia kwa relationship they didn't have a plan of living together, but you sasa vitu zimekuja zimeanza kukua moto, they are like manze, so we just move in together tuanze kuishi pamoja, ama this other person starts spending time, especially kama mtu mmoja tuseme like doesn't have like a big schedule ama hananga tight schedule, so unapata they are like let me just come ama to spend time, and mostly unapata ni the ladies, they are like I want to be with this person every time. So hata kama akona nyumba analipia rent ama analipiwa rent, in case maybe ako kampo analipiwa rent na wazazi, or she lives in a hostel, you find most of the times this lady will actually opt to spend most of her time with the guy, all right, ama in the guy's house. So that's how people end up moving together, because of what? Intimacy. Another way intimacy affects relationships, of course, mkikosa kutumia any sort of protection, any form of family planning, of course what you end up with is unprotected unprotected intimacy ama unprotected sex. So when that happens, you are very sure that unwanted pregnancy inaanza kukuja, early pregnancy inaanza kukuja in cases where somebody is still ako 18, ako 19, so you didn't expect that you're gonna get pregnant at that age, and then you find yourself pregnant. Why? Because of intimacy, all right, and because you don't use protection. So one of the things I'm here to say is, always remember, you have to use protection, or at least come up with a family planning method that works for you too. The other thing also that makes sense ni how intimacy affects the relationship is, when you think about it, sometimes intimacy causing insecurities, because you might be in that moment and then somebody makes a weird comment. Okay, so it can be your partner, inaweza kuwa ni dem ama ni chali, either of them ameambia mwingine by the way kuna venye ujui kufanya hivi, ama kuna venye unakwanga, there's a way you are bad at this, it might bring up insecurities. Alafu unaona intimacy also involve the fact that you guys are now seeing each other from another perspective, so it can start to bring insecurities, all right, and especially when somebody wants to project their insecurity on you. So me, I've been in a relationship before penye you go into intimacy with a lady, and a lady, it's almost like anaanza kucomment about your body, either anaanza kusema na hiyo kitu ni ndogo, ama anaanza kusema na anaanza kusema like uko na tumbo kubwa ama nini, and of course you can have something to say about her, but you don't end up saying, because we hauna your vibe, but you can already tell this lady is trying to project, kuna kitu anajaribu kuproject kwako, kuna insecurity anajaribu kuproject kwako. By the way, as a guy, if a lady ever tells you uko na tumbo kubwa and she also has a big tummy, it means she's projecting that feeling onto you. Aone venye utasema. And some of them, sometimes I wonder, what if I was to turn and say si pia uko na tumbo kubwa, like how would that person feel? Okay, but anyway, sometimes as a guy you'll just let it slide, unainyamazia, uko like huyo dem ni toxic kidogo, ama there's a way she doesn't have emotional intelligence. Another way how intimacy can affect a relationship, you find that when there is intimacy, people become more vulnerable to each other, it's almost like unajipatanga umeanza ku open up, and that's how you can be able to tell wasi wakiingia kwa room unaweza jua huyu na huyu washaipiga mechi pamoja, ama between these two people there's kushaikuwa na kitu, there's ever been something between these two people because of how they relate. So you find the more you are intimate with somebody, the more you start becoming more vulnerable to them, because sasa huyu ni mtu amekujua, huyu ni mtu amekuona in your birthday suit, like this is somebody who has seen you, and so it's very hard for you to not be vulnerable with him. So you find most of the time people get vulnerable with him, because one of the most awkward part about intimacy is, yes, mmeingia kwa room nini, so now there's always that part of, am I going to walk around kama nimejifunika, am I going to walk around kama kama nime dress up. So there's always that thing. So of course lazima mtakuwa vulnerable with each other, because sasa ikishafika pali you've been vulnerable to that point, then it's almost like you can't hide something from me because already naeza ona. Okay, so that's important also. Another thing also, when you think about how intimacy affects relationships, sometimes a good relationship inaweza haribiwa na intimacy, because now kitu inaitwa lust inaweza anza kuingia hapo ndani, and now it's not about you spending time together, it's not about conversations. And I think wale watu affectiwa sana na hiyo kitu ni wasichana, because now they realize, this guy kwani he wants me every time he wants it. Okay, but I think that's always a misinterpretation, because at the end of the day chali ako like, as much as we are spending quality time and having intimacy, see, at the end of the day bado tuna spend time pamoja, bado tunaongea. It's not like when intimacy happens tunanyamaziana after that. Or maybe there are some relationships in a happening hivyo, like it goes too down to last hadi that's the only thing they do, and then sasa hawana story, but you can tell that those are people who are not compatible. But for people who are compatible, most of the time sata intimacy ndio inaletanga hiyo story. That's where people start to talk about pillow talk, that's where people start to open up, napiga moshene, because you're at that point where you're vulnerable with each other. So it's important to understand that when it comes to intimacy, of course itafika point yenye inaweza fika point yenye it now becomes lust, and it stops becoming about the love in the relationship. So the other way intimacy can affect a relationship is it can also affect how you guys are relating, because you see ilianza na nyinyi kujuana and now there was no intimacy involved, especially kama you took time before you visited each other ama before ulienda kwa nyumba, especially for the ladies. If it took time before you went to the guy's place, hapo mnajua mnakuanga mmejuana genuinely, you guys call genuinely, and this person is just getting to know you for who you are. But then anytime ka intimacy kameingia hapo katikati, sometimes it can get the guy to a point where now he just wants more of that. All right, and especially kama ali have kuwait, and you see there are ladies who say, oh, you have to do the 90 days rule. So 90 days just means unakaa 90 days before engaging in any kind of intimacy ukijuana na mtu. So sometimes that's a good thing, because at least inafanyanga bondi grow, but also you need to understand that even intimacy has its part when it comes to growing the bond you grow. Okay, and that's the other point, that's how it affects a relationship, that the bond, and I think that's a positive thing, that inafanyanga bondi grow between two people. That bond grows every time you engage in intimacy, your bond ina growing more and more. All right, again I have to say, intimacy is not a guarantee for a relationship to last. Mnaweza kuwa intimate all you want, but that relationship won't last because you guys are intimate. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, haita guarantee kama ita last. If it's bad, inaweza isha. Okay, inaweza affect relationship to the point where it comes to an end. Okay, but if it's good also, it doesn't guarantee that juu mko na intimacy poa ati relationship ita last. It might just turn and be about the intimacy and iache kukua about everything else. So it's very important for you to understand, if a relationship is meant to work, it's going to work because it's meant to work, but it's going to fail because it's meant to fail. Haiko iende far. All right, and that's what I say to every person mwenye probably they are doing it for the first time. Don't expect ati huyu sasa ndio atakuwa ule mtu mwenye utaoa. Hata wewe mwenyewe deep down you feel like you want to bado explore, especially when you experience it the first time. Uko like, hey, now you want more of this, and that's always, I think hiyo inafanyikianga kila mtu. Okay, so anytime you understand that, then you don't have your expectations too high, you don't raise your expectations too high. Sawa. But the other thing I want to say is, when it comes also to intimacy and how it affects the relationship, it brings out the wild side ya mtu. Okay, unaweza pata msee mwenye mlianza kuongea and they were showing you they are this innocent person, hata akai kujua kitu, and then you start intimacy and you realize this person knows more than they were telling you, ama they start showing you things zenye hata wewe hujai experience, anaanza kukuonesha. And sometimes you find even some people have some different habits when it comes to that. Unapata msee lazima watch, there are some people who they have to watch like adult film before afanye hiyo kitu, ama before I get intimate. So sometimes it can lead also to addiction. Unaweza jipata uko addicted to to ngwati just because this person when you una date every time before they do it they have to watch, okay? And if you talk to different people watakwambia wame experience kitu kama hiyo. So kama wewe ni msee mwenye haukuna watching hizo vitu, you might find yourself starting to watch those things just because sasa uko in the company of somebody mwenye lazima watch hiyo kitu before I engage. So that's also like a weird thing that can happen, okay? And I think nikimalizia I will say, when it comes to intimacy, you always have to know what works for you, okay? So how it affects the relationship, it can either break or make your communication, because maybe this person can be doing something that you don't find haikubambi, but you are not saying anything, okay? So sometimes I find even ladies ndo hawasemangi kitu, ama probably even the guys, you probably feel umse hata ajui kukiss, like they don't have an experience in kissing na nini, ama they know, there are people who know, like ukikalisha watu watano hapo uulize what's kissing to you, ama how do you like kiss na nini, unapata kila mtu ako na their own idea of what kissing is supposed to be, ama how it's supposed to be done, okay? So it's upon you to start that communication and do it in a very polite way, kuonesha msee manze venye unafanya, I think this is the better way to do it. So communication inaweza increase your communication, because now you're communicating about what I love to do, ama ni nini napenda more about intimacy. There has to be a communication, okay? And also communication ina include even the lady telling the guy, manze unamaliza haraka, mbona umemaliza haraka hivyo na mimi hata sijakuwa, you find a lady will just tell you that, mbona umemaliza hivyo na mimi sijakuwa satisfied, and sometimes when they say it, sometimes as a guy kama hauko matured to the level where things like those don't affect you, it can really affect you, because you are like kwani udema anasema niko chini ama nini. So sasa inafika point yenye now it starts to become toxic. So it's very possible that inaanza as good intimacy, but now the toxicity inaanza kukuja through that intimacy, because either you say things that don't sit well with your partner, ama vitu kama hizo. But you tell me, according to you, how do you think intimacy affect relationships? Hebu niandikie hapo kwa comment section.
Gachin Lion.